I wasn't sure if any of you missed this very important statement from Andrew Ng from Stanford University early last year, so I wanted to quote it to you all. Electricity changed how the world operated. It upended transportation, manufacturing, agriculture, healthcare. AI is poised to have a similar impact. Artificial intelligence already powers many of our interactions today. When you ask Siri for directions, peruse Netflix recommendations, or get a fraud alert from your bank, these interactions are led by computer systems using large amounts of data to predict your needs. According to the results of our latest survey, Procurement 2030, supply chain pros are well aware of how impactful AI could be for their profession. 92% of professionals believe the profession will transform by 2030 as a direct result of new technological innovations. And 51% predict that with the help of AI, supply chain professionals will become an agile group of strategic advisors. The intention is there, but how do organizations get to the point when AI-enabled supply chain management is the norm? Getting started and knowing where to start is tough going, as with anything new and the unknown. So we know that many supply chain pros are concerned that implementing AI into their supply chains is a complex step. In fact, our survey takers ranked it as the technology they feared most difficult to adopt. But are their fears unfounded? At Procurious, we want procurement and supply chain pros to be pushing the limits on Industry 4.0 and the first to adopt new technologies. In today's webinar, How AI Saved My Day Job, Confessions from a Supply Chain Pro, we hope to demonstrate that AI is the real deal by giving you the insider information, the lowdown on what is being delivered right now for supply chain teams. I'm excited to speak with supply chain professionals who are already implementing AI in their organizations and have found that AI can improve a demonstrable bottom line impact across all their supply chain structures. Could AI revolutionize your supply chain and save your day job, allowing you to make better decisions more efficiently and in a more repeatable way over time? Let's find out. I'm Tanya Siri, founder of Procurious and host of today's webinar. I'm joined by Rob Allen, Program Director, Supply Chain Insights Offering Management for IBM, Connie Rayco from the Masterlock Company, and she's the EDI Manager. Our third guest is also the EDI Manager, but at another very famous company, Anheuser-Busch InBev. Thank you, Nicholas Bonavento, for joining us. Just to give you a little bit of background on our guest today, Rob joined IBM in Raleigh, North Carolina in 1988 and has held positions in ergonomics, procurement, and supply chain operations. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Nuclear Engineering from the University of Florida, a Master's of Engineering in Mechanical Engineering from the University of South Carolina, and a Master's of Electrical Engineering from NC State University. Nicholas started as the EDI specialist for Labatt Canada in 2017 and has since expanded his scope to become the North American EDI manager for Anheuser-Busch. Nick's focus is the strategic design of an end-to-end digital supply chain required to deliver efficient, flexible, and targeted fulfillment of consumer demand for our products. Connie Rayco has been the EDI manager at the Masterlock Company for the last 7 years using IBM's managed services. She began as the Customer Solutions Project Manager implementing Oracle's iStore and Configurator, along with being the main IT support for order management processes. She continues as a resource for order management and provides the business units training and access to IBM's BTI service. To kickstart our discussion and set the scene, it would be great, Connie and Nick, if you could give us a bit of an introduction to your roles at the Masterlock Company and Anheuser-Busch InBev, and what does a day in the life look like for you both? So, Connie, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. So, primarily as a member of the IT team, the Masterlock Company has a lot of warehouses and production areas that we have to make sure is reacting to our customers' requirements. Often that is shipping within 24 hours, et cetera, to their consumers. So we spend a lot of time making sure that everything is flowing correctly. In our days, is if there is a issue, then it's jumping on that as quickly as possible, which is pretty much the support of the IT team. But we also use the business BTI business uses that as far as making sure the flowing is going correctly, that the ASNs, the ship notices are going out when they're supposed to go out, and managing for sure that our customers continue to receive what they require they receive.
Great. So, Nick, what about a day in the life at Anheuser-Busch?
So I would mirror a lot of what Connie said. We've got a fairly complex supply chain, and need to manage and make sure that our EDI is flowing right. Things are functioning as they should be. Any kind of downtime is extremely expensive, as I'm sure it comes at no surprise. So for me specifically, I manage EDI for Canada and the U.S. So I don't go too deep into the weeds until there's a fire to put out, right? So we've got I'm managing support teams that are kind of looking at more of the tickets and the day-to-day issues. On a larger scale, we have some ongoing problems that or issues that are more complex that we take a little bit more time to dive into and analyze and understand whether we need to make them into enhancements or which are like little mini projects that we'll do for EDI, or if there's something that might relate to a process that we need to take a hard look at and see if it needs to be fixed or changed. So a lot of kind of looking at the pieces of our supply chain, I guess I would describe it as, and how they fit together, and understand where some of those opportunities are. And as we'll get into more throughout this conversation, how we can use technologies like AI and like EDI and various things like that to get some productive time back, so we can drive more of that value of identifying opportunities to improve. Right? If we're spending all of our day fighting fires, we don't really have much time to build that business case for the next great technology.
And so why did you both look into AI? I guess, why did your companies first go down this track, Connie?
Primarily was to expand our flexibility on onboarding new customers. We were growing rapidly, and the amount of customers needing to be onboarded onto EDI was more than a single person at that time could do. So we moved on to the SEBN IBM system so that they could do the heavy lifting while we continue our support for our existing customers at the time.
And Nick, a similar situation?
Yeah, I would say that it's a lot of it comes down to and Anheuser-Busch, we've got a lot of kind of disparate, decentralized systems, across our supply chain, and it brings a lot of complexity to our operation, from procurement to production and distribution, basically at all various phases, supplier and customer facing. So a big drive of ours and goal is to try and centralize things, reduce complexity, and if AI can help us do that, if like Connie mentioned, things like the supply chain business network, which we use by and large for our EDI, can help us do that, then then it's one of our it'll end up being a priority of ours if it'll help us achieve those goals.
So, Connie, yours was mainly due to a volume issue, and Nick, you had many sort of disparate systems, and this has allowed you to bring it together. Is that right?
That's correct for me.
Yeah, and I would say that's the gist of it.
So, Rob, from your perspective, what are some of the most common challenges the supply chain pros of today have to deal with, and how is AI helping them overcome these challenges?
I like the way Nick and Connie framed my answer. There's two categories that we're frequently seeing when we talk about challenges in the supply chain. One is visibility to what's going on end to end in your supply chain. And then the second is dealing with unexpected disruptions, the things that are not going according to plan, the surprises that happen to all of us that are running our supply chains. And we're seeing that AI is setting up brilliantly to deal with both of these. First, the ability to connect data end to end and then retrieve insights about that data using natural language, being able to converse with a platform using artificial intelligence that can understand conversational language and take your questions and turn that into insights into what's going on in your supply chain. So having that ability to converse with an analytics engine that connects the dots across your end-to-end supply chain. What's going on in your procurement part of the organization, the sourcing, the suppliers, all the way through manufacturing, fulfillment, order management, inventory management to final delivery, last mile to your customers. Having that ability to have a platform that connects those dots and understands the things that are painful to users, that visibility and access to insights is a very important part of where AI is fitting in. But the second is we're seeing AI as being very strong in dealing with external events, monitoring unstructured data, dark data that's outside of the typical structured data that supply chain people are used to dealing with, and starting to build some correlations with what are the disruptions, the things that are going to cause a lot of work and affect our operations, our costs, our fulfillment and delivery to customers. We're finding that AI is very well suited to find those correlations between the external data and your supply chain operations.
Sounds like everyone's dream, really, isn't it? Because trying to find data in an organisation and the right data is always a challenge. So, Connie, at Masterlock, has what's been your personal experience of implementing AI? Are these some of the problems that you've been able to solve by using the system?
Yeah, yes, it has. We often have 2 or 3 new onboardings going on at the same time, along with map change requests. I only have 2 people on my team here in the corporate office and 1 in our Paris office, and so we're kind of lean. We find that providing what IBM needs and then sending it off to them to do all the hard work, and then we do go on to the next one so that we can keep things moving quickly. Honestly, we would have to have another person in the team if we were doing the mapping and the support ourselves.
Right. Well, that's a huge benefit. So, Nick, how hard was it to implement AI, and what was the adoption like within your team?
So it's a good question. I think it's kind of 2 phases. First for us was transitioning to the SCBN platform for EDI, and like Connie just described, having IBM do the majority of the heavy lifting in terms of mapping, map changes, onboarding. So that was the first step for us, and that came with some significant complexity on our side, trying to figure out those legacy systems, those black boxes that have been around forever, and now we've got to try and pick them apart and move them over to something more modern. And I'm sure lots of organizations can kind of identify with that kind of struggle. So that's, of course, a challenge. The second phase is, I would say, more to the AI side, where once we are on the SCBN and we have access to BTI, business transaction intelligence, which Connie's mentioned already, getting the adoption up for that tool within some of our business teams was, I guess the second portion of that. So, and doing that, I'd say the one challenge for that and for most any kind of similar effort would be to show the users how it will benefit them, right?
Yeah,
so if you
incentivize, why are we doing this? Yeah,
exactly. So when we give them an incentive to say, look, I'm not adding another task for you to do. I'm not giving you more work. In fact, what I'm giving you here is a tool to help you solve your own problems, right? You don't want to be opening a ticket with IT and then waiting a day or 2 to get a resolution. If you don't have to, here's a way that you can bypass that process, and it saves our technical team's time. It saves our business team's time. So, I would say if you can't frame it that way, then it can be a real challenge to get that adoption. But if you can show them the value and how it'll help them, then a lot of people will kind of take their own interest and then kind of run with the tool.
What's in it for me? It's always the key thing, isn't it? Now,
Right.
There's a bit of lingo, a bit of jargon in there. SCBN, Rob, I'm assuming that's Supply Chain Business Network, is it?
That's correct, and I'm glad you brought that up because both Connie and Nick are referring to two products that IBM, they're users of Supply Chain Business Network and then Business Transaction Intelligence, BTI. And I'm the product
why don't
owner
you tell
for...
us a bit about that? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Well, there's a set of manifestations of AI in our product portfolio. The Supply Chain Business Network, how we manage the file transfers and the network of connections, especially for the EDI mapping and connectivity, confirming that where do those EDI transactions land. And then we've folded in this add-on onto Supply Chain Business Network, Business Transaction Intelligence, that does some amazing things related to anomaly detection, improved insights around it. Are we seeing any trends that may be interesting and informative to the users, trying to create this set of insights that help our clients get more information to improve the transactions and insights around the EDI map.
Yes, it did. I'm glad you defined that because our listeners may not have known some of those terms. So back to implementation. I mean, Nick was talking to us about, spelling out what's in it for me. Rob, from everyone you're talking to, where do the hesitations lie with supply chain pros in implementing AI? What are some of the stumbling blocks people are either feeling or that are real to them?
I heard Nick use the word adoption, and that's one of the focus areas for us is when we're talking about using AI to deliver value, there has to be this path towards adoption where the users are seeing the value of implementing this and helping them with their day jobs so they're able to be more successful, they're able to do things more efficiently. That's part of the issue is for us to communicate the value to them, how it sets up their job for success. We actually have had some challenges where as we're interviewing and selecting some folks in the clients that are using Supply Chain Insights, there's a little bit of hesitation because they're worried, is this going to take over my job? And we'll talk more about that through this session, we've been able to present this as we're taking away the redundant tasks and we're helping you to focus on the strategic tasks to help you drive value, to help you be a star in your performance. And this is really all about implementing any technology. It's all about return on investment. If we implement this, is there going to be a clear path to improved value? And that's part of the thread that we're seeing is, can we communicate that? Can we show examples of that? That's the challenge we're facing.
Yeah, and I mean, the point I make to everyone is, hey, we've all been complaining about being stuck in this transactional malaise, I call it, for years. If I could only get the data, if I could only do this, I could be more strategic. And the great thing about all these new tools is it actually enables us to do that and really become the trusted advisor and sort of solve some of these bigger commercial problems rather than being sort of stuck in a data room. But, I know there's still... people are still looking for some practical examples of AI, and I hope this conversation today is addressing that. And a lot of people say there's still a lot of hype about AI. Rob, what do you say when you hear those sort of comments?
Well, I think IBM is at least partially responsible for the hype. We've invested a tremendous amount of energy into publicizing what Watson, our AI engine and platform, has done, winning Jeopardy. We beat Ken Jennings at Jeopardy, and we've done some amazing things in healthcare, with cancer research, with financial services. But we intentionally started on our path in supply chain by working on IBM's own supply chain. We had to do some sandbox, some experimentation, and then prove that these are some use cases and practical examples of how AI could work for supply chain. And from there, we were able to show that and build on that to offer to clients. We now have several referenceable clients who've dived into this, and they're starting to show that value proposition, that 3 months in, you get this type of return, and here's an approach we took. It's really important. It's not just implementing technology for the sake of implementing technology. It's for the purpose of here's what we can give to the organization by using AI. The impact of AI, the story we have now is so much stronger than even a year ago. A year ago,
Yes.
it was largely a promise. Now there's actually results to talk to.
Excellent. And Connie and Nick, what would you say to people who haven't yet started on their AI journey or are a bit reluctant to take the plunge? Connie, let's start with you.
Well, I generally would say, what's your volume and your backlog, and based on what their answer would be to something like that, I would provide them with how to get it done. How to use IBM SCBN for your EDI and using the mapping abilities and the knowledge that IBM's personnel has. Also using, again, the explaining the BTI tool, which has become vital in our organization once we have our business users trained. So it's a lot of that is just saying this is how it works and how can you apply it to your business.
Actually, Connie, you've made a lot of great points, but this point about, a lot of people are saying, these new technologies are going to take away my jobs. Well, actually all the jobs have nearly been taken, and when you talk about a small team, backlogs, a lot of people out there are overwhelmed with the kind of, work they need to get through. So really, it's not really about losing any more jobs. It's probably about just getting the things done that you need to get done, which is a bit of a different take on this, isn't it?
Yes, and if you think most companies don't want to grow their personnel or they're trying to stay status quo, it's a good way of being able to still get the job done and serving your customers and your vendors.
And Nick, what about you? What would you say to people who are a bit reluctant still to take the plunge?
I would agree with your last point. Whereas in 2019, most organizations have already done what they can to kind of run lean, like Connie said too, and AB, we definitely do the same. We try and run an efficient organization. We're very cost oriented. But it also means that some of our teams are running kind of skinny, and I think Connie mentioned earlier, having a few in-house resources to do and manage a pretty large platform and user base can be a challenge on the support side, and it can oftentimes prevent you from being able to take that more strategic view, like Rob was saying, where we don't necessarily have the data or the time or the resources or the buy-in or whatever it is to be able to take a step back and improve things. So, when I look at AI, it's we're definitely not at a mature state, and like Rob said, it was a lot of potential and promise just a few short years ago, and now we're starting to see some of those real-world applications. But I would definitely say we're not at a point of mass adoption and maturity. So I see what we're doing now as kind of foraging that path, building out the proofs of concept, and showing that value, right? So to answer your question, specifically, the challenges or the some of the apprehension that organizations may have to adopting this now, I'd say, get all of your stakeholders across technical and business teams, different functional groups, get them in a room, as many as you can at least, and kind of have a little lean event and to sit down and take a hard look at your business processes. And what kind of the mantra that I live by is always ask, why do we do things this way, and always challenge the answer that if you get the answer, because we always have, right? So if you're sitting in a room and that's the predominant answer you're getting about why your supply chain functions the way it does, why certain technologies are used or are not being used, then it may be worth taking a look at AI or at other types of technologies like supply chain insights or supply chain business network, or even just getting off your ancient legacy mainframe. Maybe that'll be the biggest help for your organization. But most likely, every organization has some kind of strategic move like that they're kind of apprehensive to make.
It sounds very familiar to a lot of companies and organizations I talk with, so both those comments resonate. Okay, let's pick up the pace here. I've got a few quick-fire questions for you both. So, question one, what's the one thing that each of you would want to improve about AI at this point? Connie? Well,
primarily for the IBM version of BTI, I know they're working on this, but it would really help our business if BTI was a little more global, doing data fact transactions and being able to use this in our European business. The other would be also adding a lot more transactions. Right now it is limited in the number of transactions you can see through the flow, but there are a number of transactions that would aid the business either in the warehouse or elsewhere that they can see what's flowing. And so I think that's the biggest improvement I'd like to see.
Nick, what about you?
I'd love to see more customization and flexibility in terms of the actual business logic that's finding exceptions, right? So Rob mentioned earlier, we've got this analytics platform, and it's going to find the correlations and find the exceptions and whatnot. But a lot of us in our own, when we're familiar with our business, you probably know who your problem suppliers are. You probably know which manufacturing sites have the highest likelihood of downtime and whatnot. It would be great if I could highlight that to the system and say, hey, keep an eye on this supplier because they're always late on shipments, and keep an eye on this certain transaction or whatnot, and define my own business rules. I think that would be fantastic.
It's always the way, isn't it, Nick? You get this great insights and data, and then you go, I want more now that I can see how great this is.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to do more, yeah. Now, so Rob, you've actually got your hands on the wheel because you can actually design these products, can't you? So, what would you like to improve about AI?
I love the way both Connie and Nick answered, because one of the things we are working is to make this essentially a self-healing platform where we're watching the keystroke, every keystroke that our users type in, and every event they manage, every supplier they monitor. We're watching that and adding that to the recipe of your pull-down menu. Who are the suppliers I should worry about, or what are the events I need to track? So that's definitely something. This process of the platform is getting more and more intelligent with every keystroke that it watches you play. That's sort of the theme we're building. But what we're really eager to start demonstrating more of, our platform, Supply Chain Insights, does a lot of descriptive analytics. It's starting to do some pretty incredible predictive analytics, looking 15 days out to predict weather impacts on shipments, or what's going on if something's on Twitter, is that going to affect our pricing, and looking at all those things to predict things. But we're really eager to get into this prescriptive notion of, can we start telling you what to do, leading to autonomous analytics, where a lot of our clients are saying, if this platform can tell me what the best answer is, can't I go ahead and turn it on to do some RPA? So those are some of the cool things we're working on. The potential's there for AI to move beyond just descriptive and predictive into prescriptive and autonomous. Those are some of the things we're really excited about, that we're just trying to force that as fast as we can.
Sounds very exciting, and from what Connie and Nick have said so far, it definitely seems like it adds value. And I guess I wanted to just expand on that. We've talked about the efficiencies and how much it's helping you. What are you and your teams doing with the extra time? I know it's not going out and playing golf, because I know how busy you guys are. So, what's it enabled you to do? Add value in other areas, or what's sort of been the benefit, Connie?
Well, we still have a good deal of backlog, so we really don't have extra time.
I had a feeling you said it.
And we also are working to streamline our internal processes. So a lot of we are actively looking into is how we can help order management handle their errors that come in from the customers, that we receive pricing errors, cross-reference aren't set up, helping them be able to do their job more efficiently. So one of the things we're using, they use BTI there, but we also want to provide them with some changes to our interfaces and so forth, so that they can be more efficient themselves.
Nick, what about your team?
It's actually similar to what Connie said. A lot of, with some of that added time we can get back, taking a step back, looking at our processes, and not just on the support side or within the technical teams, but also a lot of times on the business side. Connie mentioned cross references. a lot of times that feeds into our master data systems, and we have issues with that. But it comes from commercial processes, right? When we put tons of new SKUs in the market every season, you're always seeing new beers on the shelves, right? So there's a lot of challenge where when we are managing things in this transactional world, like you described earlier, we just don't have time for, right? So we can't really manage by exception. We just have to touch almost every transaction, or far more than we would like to. And the goal that I have for some of the time we get back is to take a purely managed by exception model, and then at the same time, pivot and use that resource to build out the business case for the next platform or the next tool, or the next process, whatever it is that will kind of be the next lowest hanging fruit for us.
Rob, is this the dream? Is this what you imagined you would deliver for supply chain teams around the world?
They're such good answers. I really like the whole process of I'll share an anecdote with one of our first referenceable clients, Lenovo. Their supply assurance manager was spending about 75 to 80% of his time firefighting, chasing parts, fire drills. If a supplier decommitted or a part was late, his whole team had to just go react to that and go chase, which is so much harder and demoralizing. You're no longer a hero. You're actually everyone's pointing their finger at you as the person that's at fault for the supply chain exploding on them. And it was demoralizing. They were spending all their time doing this and spinning. And when you get a platform that helps you predict, anticipate late deliveries, and start to generate playbooks on what to do with them, that's where his team's completely transformed out of a parts chasing firefighting team into I like the way Nick used the term managed by exception. They're investing that time strategically, doing things that help advance the business, the things that they want to do, that they know are important, rather than just what is urgent. And that's a really dramatic change that as we monitor the value of these AI platforms, are we getting there where they're getting out of these mundane firefighting, chasing into proactive, strategic, doing the things that they know are important? That's the goal.
Hey, and if I can jump in for a second. Sorry, Rob. So you just mentioned making playbooks. That was actually a point I forgot to mention, is when we've got enhanced visibility and and we're not so reactionary anymore, we can start to build better processes around that platform of visibility that we didn't have before. So what I found was a lot of times when we looked at our business processes in our old world, they functioned the way they did as a kind of like a poor patch over the fact that we didn't have good visibility. And so everything was just trying to, patch the holes in the ship where there was like a small leak and things falling through the cracks in the supply chain because we didn't necessarily know what was happening. So making playbooks and things like that it resonates a lot with our story as well. So I want to make sure I mention that.
We love a playbook. We love in control and capable processes. But, so often we're out of control because we're just overwhelmed. So it's great to hear all these benefits. Okay, another challenging question. If you were to go back to the start and implement AI, what would you do differently? Connie?
Well, primarily, I think knowing what's out there now compared to what was out there 8-9 years ago. I think adding more to the supply chain side of things. I wouldn't have changed putting in SCBN. I wouldn't have changed the BTI part and getting the business users involved. But I think, and I know we're kind of looking at it now, is the supply chain side of the business. And if it was there when we started last time, I think that would have been a part of our implementation.
Nick, what about you? What would you do differently?
Well, I'd mentioned earlier about getting everyone in a room, all your stakeholder groups, and taking a hard look at your processes. And I would have done that on a bigger scale. So when this started, we took a hard look at our mostly technical side of our support and enhancement teams, and some of our project teams, but I think, standing where I am now and looking back, a lot of the issues we had with, things like master data and things, commercial processes and a lot of the tertiary kind of dependencies that are kind of feed into our supply chain and feed into our EDI platform and all of it. I would have taken a more holistic look, if that makes sense. So that's one piece of advice that I would give to anyone looking at that today.
Rob, I don't know if I should ask IBM this question, but hey, let's go for it. If you were to go back to the start and implement AI again, what would you do differently?
You gave me a little bit of lead time, so I know how to answer this question. But yeah, thanks for what's interesting is we're really big fans of this agile approach to start small, fail fast. I don't know if that term resonates with every IT developer, but I've been in IT transformation, or I was an SAP development manager for 4 painful years, and we used to do these monolithic, monstrous IT projects that would take us years. And we shifted about 4 years ago to away from the waterfall approach into this design thinking, agile approach to just do very small bite sizes, never let an iteration be more than 2 to 3 weeks. That's what we really, I think we would have been much further along if we'd started that a year earlier. Just doing that, start small, fail fast, then iterate again, learn from that, and make every engagement bite-sized. So it's not, if somebody says, I want to try out AI, it's not, okay, well, here's a 1-year contract. It's let's do a 5-week engagement, give you a POC. That's what I really, I'm sort of twisting your question around because that's what we've adjusted to. But I wish we'd started that sooner to give this bite-sized engagement and learn from what nobody wants to spend $10 million on a project, but they're okay to try out a POC for 5 weeks. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and I think that was the initial perception. People felt like this was an ERP rollout, or they had to sort of boil the ocean. And these technologies sit on top of your legacy systems. You can implement something quickly. So I think that is a good sort of perception to sort of make sure is correct. Now, I guess for our listeners, we better stay true to the title of this webinar, and I need to ask you, how has AI saved your day job, Connie? I think you probably answered it, but we've got to ask the succinct question.
Primarily, less calls or less emails for help from our business users on how to read an ASN or whether an invoice went out or not. The business now can handle these questions themselves. We're using BTI to verify compliance issues and are reported by our customers. We've had a great success using the BTI and getting our fines reduced or negated. Plus, with much work to work with compliance, they were able to prove to one of our customers that their system was not handling correctly, and that they returned several thousands of dollars back to us in fines that they had charged us, when it turned out it was their process that was not working and ours was.
Nice.
So, yes. So it was a big win.
A hard dollar benefit,
Yeah. So as far as SCBN mapping side, we are able to add new customers and and manage our map changes in a very efficient manner. We priority-wise it simplifies what we prioritize with, and we just serve our customers much better with this.
Wow, that ticks a lot of boxes. What about you, Nick? How has it saved your day job?
I'd say through the value that we could bring back to the business. So if we can go to various teams, like Connie's mentioned a lot of it, like our order management, a lot of our people in the warehouses and managing distribution, our folks managing procurement of raw materials and those deliveries. If we can go to them and their leadership and say, hey, your team has hundreds and thousands of hours of productive time that they can use towards more value added projects or efforts or analytics and other things that they can do besides the firefighting. Like has already been said, if we can get away from that constant managed by firefighting and rather managed by exception, I think that really has shown the value of this effort, and as long as we keep driving that value, then we'll continue to save our day job, so to speak.
And Rob, AI is your day job, but what are you seeing for others?
Well, I already touched on this earlier, but one of the more impressive manifestations of AI for our first wave of clients is this concept of taking the tribal knowledge of what teams have done. They have a set of processes, and if somebody retires, they take all that with them. Part of our platform is we create digital playbooks, and we don't do this where somebody has to sit in a room and type it all up or create it. It's done as we're watching folks manage events inside our collaboration platform, where we convert all those exchanges of information, we tie it to the event, we evaluate the sentiment of how they handled the event. Was it a positive outcome? Was it a negative outcome? And then we tweak that with every event using conversational analytics. And so that's one of those really powerful representations of how it's been able to convert this technology into something very pragmatic and practical. So now they have this playbook, and all of that tribal knowledge that used to disappear whenever somebody left the company or retired, or it's now part of this platform. We have for one of our clients, they currently have 30 digital playbooks for a set of categories of what do we do when we have a decision to make on assigning a dedicated truck or applying premium shipments, or there's a set of actions that they determine this is important enough, I want to create the playbook, and then we start feeding that using our conversational analytics, which is AI, into the playbook. It's tweaked, it's rated, everybody has a chance to give a thumbs up or thumbs down on each step of the playbook. It's a pretty powerful representation that has allowed the users to say, I'm spending time more efficiently and working more effectively.
Now, we're going to be running out of time here shortly. So as we sort of near the end of the discussion, I really wanted to touch on what we all feel the future is going to hold. And Rob, when I read about what IBM's doing, we're talking about, maybe being able to predict supply chain cycle times into the future, new frontiers where Watson adapts to your supply chain and users and learns about trends, issues, actions, and behaviours to make recommendations. Well, you're almost doing that today, aren't you? But can you just talk a little bit about how you think this is going to play out and how it's going to further help supply chain pros?
I think we're one of many vendors that have decided AI is definitely has a lot of longevity in the supply chain space, and we're fortunate enough to have the technology, $30 billion investment of technology to bring to bear to this. But we're connecting to new data sources. Right now, we have Twitter, we have the weather company, we have border crossing data, we've got port drayage. There's a set of things that we've already identified, but with every engagement, we're connecting Watson to more and more external data. We're understanding a wider range of use cases. It's dazzling to me how fast Watson's learning, and we're seeing this. It's not linear; it's exponential. The way Watson's able to connect dots on supply chain use cases. And one last point I was going to make is we've done a lot of research on the companies that are leaders versus followers and adopting technology. We've partnered with Stanford and other companies or other research entities to say, what's the value of jumping in early versus late? And there's this direct, amazing correlation between those companies that adopt and are leaders in using technology that's suited to that industry and the way they thrive as a company. So that's what I think this is definitely something that it's got some legs. We're starting to demonstrate some pretty incredible returns, but the returns are just going to get more and more significant with every data point and external source that we connect with.
Connie and Nick, what do you predict or hope the future for AI holds within your organisation? Connie?
Currently, we're looking forward to using other aspects of AI with IBM to work with our ERP system. We're digging more into the supplier side and the full supply chain. We actually have IBM coming in and looking at how they can help us in that regard, just to make us more efficient and more profitable.
Nick?
I would imagine that one day, hopefully not too far into the future, we can have, I think as Rob touched on it previously, these AI platforms that can connect directly into other types of, prescriptive and autonomous, processes. So, some organizations have started to adopt that view, and we're at AB we're hoping to be a leader here and to keep pushing the envelope on not just AI but also automation technologies, and if we can connect those dots, I feel like what all these kind of buzzwords and hot topics of future technologies can kind of fit together, right? Like AI and blockchain and RPA and I would hope that at some point in the future we can have a world where we've got this intelligent system, right? This intelligent end-to-end system that can not just identify things and raise alerts and alarms, but also execute on certain things and just drive that much more value.
Now, as everyone returns to their desk, to their backlog, and starts dreaming about AI, what are your final words of advice to people who's starting on their journey? And I think I've kind of asked you this question, but, Connie, is there some sort of parting words of advice for our listeners?
Well, I would say review your volume and your ability to keep up with the growing trends. Look into AI to allow for more flexibility, speed in providing your customers or suppliers what they need. This is what's going to help your business grow and keep you valuable in the marketplace.
I love it. Competitive advantage. Nick, what about you?
I'd say, like I said earlier, get the right people into a room, pick their brains, understand what the real pain points are for your operation, where's the low-hanging fruit, and, whether that's AI or not, there's most likely something in there that is a glaring, driver of waste, whether it's wasted dollars or time or effort or efficiency. Different KPIs can be impacted, but, what I found when taking a step back was, I thought I understood our supply chain until, really kind of compartmentalizing it and deconstructing it, and realizing just how complex it is and how much waste there is in something that at first glance seems like it's a well-oiled machine, right? So if you can get the right people involved and get that input from those process experts and find those pain points, then from there, half the challenge is defining the problem. So if you really have a good hold on that, you've got a real good starting point.
Rob, what about you? Final words of advice.
I thought those were great comments. So I don't think I can add anything except the recommendation: start small, get a POC, don't give it a try. That this is definitely, you want to be a leader in this space, not a follower. Yes. But I loved the comments and loved the perspective that what came out of this call. Thank you.
I've been saying to people, fortune favors the bold. Really, just give it a try. I mean, I think you'll really be rewarded with it, even though it is difficult to introduce new ideas and concepts, systems at times. I think that professionals today will be rewarded for, trying to make sure their companies are taking advantage of these technologies, as Connie said, for the competitive advantage. Well, thank you three all so much for joining us today. To our listeners, I hope you've left feeling inspired and motivated to take the plunge with AI. If you'd like to listen to this webinar again or share it with your peers, we'll be making the on-demand version available on Procurious from tomorrow. So thank you.